Let's talk about what's going on American campuses and media, and so many that are taking up positions that are anti-Israel. Is this just blatant anti-Semitism? Or is there something more going on? Well, let me begin with this. Propaganda, information wars have always been part of every military strategy. The control of people's minds and perceptions. What I'm witnessing and I see, I have no doubt that hundreds of millions of dollars have been poured into a propaganda campaign to create a completely false and alternative narrative. Because the only one that perhaps some people may buy into. And what is that false narrative? That Israel are occupiers, the Jewish people in Israel, colonialization, apartheid, and just like the Europeans came into America and essentially displaced the natives, the indigenous natives called the Indians, and Australia did that to the indigenous Aborigines, and so on. That's what the Jews did. Complete false narrative, ignoring 3,800 years history of a promised land, ignoring the history of Jews being there long before Islam was born, long before Christianity was born, and the Jews being displaced, and yet continuing to yearn and long and live there and do whatever possible to return there. But it's a great narrative. You don't know the facts. What's the narrative? The oppressed, the minority. They're in concentration camps. They're being oppressed. But how do you explain the fact that they're brutally killing and murdering and calling for the murder of every man, woman, Jewish man, woman, and child, as they call it, from sea to river? Not just certain parts, and in the fashion that is unspeakable. The massacres that happened on October 7th. Well, when people are really oppressed, they'll do anything. I'm not justifying it and this, but look what Israel's doing in Gaza. A complete narrative. You break it apart, it has no basis, and the media buys into it. So I definitely think at the heart of it is ultimately just plain raw anti-Semitism, which I will talk about in a next installment video. So it's now the time of those that are clear-headed and people who understand what's going on and not buying into false narratives. You know, the Nazis, they didn't begin killing Jews. They first was a propaganda war. They painted and dehumanized the Jews. They painted them as rodents. Look at the caricatures. Little children were seeing rodents. What do you do to rodents? What do you do to cockroaches? At some point, they become so dehumanized, you're not even killing a human being. But those that understand have to immediately rise and say it's a false narrative. I wish there was a media entity that called everyone out on this. And unfortunately, it has spread. It's not just a few people. The good news is the majority of the United States, I believe of the Western world, have not bought into this narrative. But still, it keeps chipping away and people keep bringing it up. I see families are literally not speaking to each other because of this. We're not perfect. The Jewish people are not perfect. Israel is not perfect. But it's very, very clear, without question, who the oppressor is and who's the oppressed. Yes, Israel has a powerful military to defend itself. But its real war is not just defending itself and destroying and eradicating evil and eradicating murderers and brutal murderers. The real war is we want a world of peace. We want a world of light. That's what Jews have been fighting for 3,800 years from the time of Abraham. And we need to declare that. Unfortunately, the path to that sometimes requires eliminating bad people. evil people. Germany and Japan in World War II had to be completely destroyed because they refused to surrender, and till unconditional surrender. And today what? They are superpowers. They're strong empires. They're strong countries. And they're allies with the allies that they were fighting. And Germany is an ally with the United States and with Israel, with Jews. Who would have believed 80 years ago? Because that strength of eradicating evil in the name of a moral cause, a moral clarity, is actually the way to peace. So I will say, what's going on today in Gaza, though unwanted, is actually the way to peace, because you're destroying those that fight peace and use civilians, their own civilians, as shields. So my friends, we all have to mobilize ourselves and join in this information war. Those that understand the real story have to share it. I don't believe in going into debates, and we're not talking about fighting fire with fire, but with passion, the true story. And there's enough information out there. I just did another class just yesterday. I encourage you to watch it. The History of the Holy Land, revealing truths and dispelling myths. Check it out. We will prevail because truth ultimately prevails. We want it to be faster than slower, and light dispels darkness automatically, as truth dispels falsehoods, as long as you're shining the truth. Because falsity, lies, darkness thrives in the absence of truth. So we cannot allow the truth to be covered up, because then what will emerge are myths, fiction of the worst sort. So that is our job, to shine the light. Now, why campuses and academia have been caught up? I've shared my thoughts on that. I think once you cut God, and therefore morality, out of the picture, anything goes. And it's a narrative that's connected to godlessness and basically moral relativism, intentionally clouding the issues, besides the fact the propaganda war that's being fed and fueled and financed. But it's a narrative that can be convenient. You choose who you want to choose. Look at the people who are so-called defending the oppressed. Suddenly the nation has been more oppressed than all nations, the Jews, are suddenly the oppressors. Is it because Jews are successful? So they may be the favorite minority to pick on, a successful minority. And George Orwell said, it's not that they love the impoverished and the poor. They hate the successful ones. So that is a cancer that has to also be eliminated. And it's through, again, shining the light, not just taking it lying down. Universities should be sued, just as they would be sued if they were anti-feminist, or if they were anti-black, or any other minority discrimination. They should be sued for every anti-Semitic act. Let them be in courts where they're standing to lose hundreds of millions of dollars, and then we'll see what happens. It's enough that Jews are the only ones you can pick on as a minority. All other minorities. But it's all part of the false narrative, and there is fundamental anti-Semitism involved in it. God should bless us all that we shine the light and shine the truth, and that should dispel all darkness, and we should merit to see, through our efforts, with God's help, a world filled with divine knowledge, with truth, with light, as the waters cover the sea. Simon Jacobson here, meaningfullife.com. Please go to our website, meaningfullife.com/Israel at War, with a full array of resources that is constantly being updated, both information, inspiration, direction, guidance, clarity, hope, confidence. We will prevail. This is our defining moment, but we will prevail. And you and I need to partner, all of us together, in not being bystanders, but being proactive and initiating.